Hi everybody, Dan here. In this week's reading assignment and Getting Past No, we read about the selective use of power. For example, letting them know they have a way out, asking reality testing questions, giving them a choice, and negotiating even when you can win without negotiating. So I thought you might be entertained by some of the examples I've gleaned from interviews with FBI agents who also were in the position of negotiators. So we'll start off with a kidnap case that I profiled. And for those of you who have kids, I'd like you to imagine this. And even if you don't have kids, it's easy to imagine this. It's horrific. Imagine answering the phone to hear a disguised voice. You know how voices are digitally disguised and they sound really creepy anyway? And this voice is saying, "We have your daughter. If we do not receive $800,000 by Friday, she will be killed. Your house is being watched. If you call the police, we will know it, and we promise you she will be killed. We will call back tomorrow at noon. Get the money. Click." Imagine receiving a call like that, and then running frantically through the house to find out your daughter indeed was missing. Let's consider the power relationship. The kidnapper has the power of life or death over your loved one. That's bad enough, but he also has another kind of power, and that is the psychological power of evil. I mean, you and I would not make a phone call like this as a joke. He is doing it for real. And so in our minds, we form an image of somebody who is so beyond the pale of human behavior that he is even more diabolical, more alien in our minds. And we fear this man. We would stifle our outrage. We would probably beg. I thought it was interesting that the FBI agents who were involved in this case did not consider the kidnapper to be all powerful. And they said basically we were in control from day one. Those guys just didn't know it. Here's how it worked. The FBI did get into the house under the cover of night, and they were camouflaged. They got in and they lived in the house, coaching the parents to ask for more time to raise money. $800,000 is a lot of money, unless, of course, you are a college professor. And so they had to, they were told to exaggerate the difficulties of liquidity. I mean, no one has $800,000 cash, so we have to sell stocks and bonds and that sort of thing, and it takes time. They were also coached to offer more money in exchange just for a little more time. And one of the agents I interviewed said you'd be amazed how easy it is to appeal to the greed of these kidnappers. Back then, this is before digital Facebook sites or Snapchat or whatever you call it. So they asked for proof of life, and that took a couple of days. The father was the businessman in the negotiation, and the mother took a softer line, often keeping the kidnappers, there were like 3 of them, on the phone much longer. And remember how our book talked about mixing hard and soft negotiation strategies. It's interesting that all through the negotiations, the kidnappers thought they were in control. The parents begged and pleaded. They kept the kidnappers on the phone by offering more. They adopted an attitude of complete surrender. And they were able to extend the timeline until their daughter was rescued. By the way, I interviewed the 2 agents who made the initial arrest. They were surveilling a nearby gas station when they got the signal that the guy they saw enter the phone booth was calling the house of the parents. So when that guy came out of the phone booth, both agents tackled him, screaming in either ear, "Where's Susan?" The suspect was so rattled, he told him the hiding place, and she was rescued that day. Unharmed, by the way. And these all-powerful kidnappers, the masterminds, life in prison. Now, here's another example of negotiating with the powerful, and that has to do with hostage negotiations. Generally speaking, the hostage taker will make demands and supplement his demands with, or I will kill them all. So the FBI hostage negotiators that I interviewed told me that we will let the bad guy think he's in control while tactfully reminding him that he is surrounded by SWAT. So this reminds me of the reality testing, you know, like, what do you think will happen kind of questions. But here's what really surprised me. The FBI negotiator shows much more empathy than I ever would have thought. They ask questions like, what's your name? We can't talk unless we know each other's names. Now, mind you, they're over the phone. Are you okay? Are you hurt? Are you cold? Or are you hungry? Imagine these questions coming from a female voice, a female negotiator. It would be even more sympathetic. And it would have a tremendous impact on a guy who is on the verge of hysteria and irrationality at the end of his rope. Now, the negotiator also offers enticements, again, to calm this person down. I was told we don't threaten force, we gain his trust. Every step of the way, the bad guy loses more control of the situation to the negotiator. And just to show you that the FBI is playing hardball, if circumstances warrant this, they may use the rapport that they have built with that hostage taker to get him to come to the window, at which point an FBI sniper might take that hostage taker out. Now again, that would be when you're dealing with somebody who is totally irrational and about to kill 20 innocent men, women, and children. So it's certainly justified. Here's another interesting example of negotiating when you have all kinds of power and don't use it. A farmer was taking part in a negotiation with or negotiation against the government's farming policies, and he was in a parade of all kinds of other farm vehicles. He was driving a big tractor with an enclosure. You've seen those. When he suddenly made a turn, crashed through the White House gates, drove up to the White House and declared through a bullhorn that his tractor was filled with explosives. Now you can imagine the security at the White House is rather substantial. This guy was surrounded by guns and God knows what else. Nonetheless, an FBI negotiator talked him out of it. It was a female negotiator, and she said, come on out, Dwight. So she had his first name through the negotiations. You said you were coming out. You gave me your word. Remember the principle of consistency. When we get them to make a public commitment, come on out now. And the farmer did, and there were no explosives. The poor guy had just snapped. Here's an interesting example. 2 escaped convicts were finally detected after a long search in a trailer park. And they were, as you can believe, just surrounded by police and sheriff and FBI and hundreds of rifles. Here they are in a trailer, an aluminum trailer that could have been riddled with bullets. But they held back and they asked the FBI to negotiate. The negotiator began asking these 2 escaped convicts about the prison conditions, and apparently they really were bad. And these guys swore, we're never going to go back because it was so bad there. And mind you, these guys were killers. They were not there for parking tickets. Nonetheless, these were bad conditions. And the negotiator said, I didn't know it was that bad. You've got a story to tell. The whole world should hear about this. And the 2 guys surrendered. This example I remember because I'm old enough to remember. In 1996, there was a long siege in which anti-government men called the Freemen were surrounded by authorities, police, sheriffs, FBI. And the negotiator discovered that the person he was negotiating there at this compound in Montana did not have decision-making authority. And we've talked about, or we've read about this in our books. You've got to get the decision maker involved. Who was the decision maker? Well, the decision maker was the leader of this group who was in jail in another state. The FBI actually flew the local head of the group to the next state where he could get permission from the jail leader to surrender, and then brought him back to the compound where he convinced the group to give up. Here's another, I mean, that was an example of incredible power that they didn't use. They used the power of negotiation even though they didn't have to, which is something we read about in Getting Past No. One thing I want to stress as I end this is that the FBI and, well, the SWAT, the Special Weapon Attack Team, and the negotiators are not adversarial as the movies would like us to believe. They work together, they plan together, they practice together, and they both hope for a peaceful solution. Okay, that's it for this one. I thought you might enjoy it. Maybe, I don't know, there might be one question, a very general question on the midterm from this, just to keep you honest. Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.